stuff, and I know she's going to stay up there on the Hill this week and keep meeting with senators, and you'll be all over it. Thank you, Kelly. And joining us now, MSNBC political analyst Richard Wolff, but more importantly, he is the author of the new book, just published, Renegade, The Making of a President, detailing his time with the president as first a Newsweek campaign reporter, and of course a reporter for MSNBC, and it is an amazing book, and really in the tradition of Teddy White, the great tradition of 1960 of the making of the president. So we are so pleased that you could take time from book tour to be with us today. First of all, the White House reaction. You acknowledged that when you first were covering Barack Obama at the beginning, and you started with him very early on, and then in Iowa, it was really Barack Obama who suggested that you write this book?
That's right. You know, we were on the plane one day, and actually this was sort of after the race speech in Philadelphia, so it was a bit further on, and he said, you know, why don't you write a book about this whole thing? And, you know, I love those Teddy White books. They were really great. And I actually told him it was a stupid idea, and which tells you how much I know. And that people...
Barack Obama as my book agent. I like those.
Yeah. Except I told him that it was a kind of book people wouldn't want to read. I reconsidered my position. I went back to him and said maybe it was a good idea. And he said, yeah, that's why I'm running for president, because I have a few good ideas.
Got a few good ideas indeed. Now, you have a lot of newsy nuggets in here, aside from really digging deep and understanding the man as no one else has been able to. But you refer to the race speech. You report that he wanted to do a speech, the timing wasn't right, but then he made one last-minute appeal to
Jeremiah Wright.
Jeremiah Wright.
You know, so he delivered the speech, and then they knew, having come out of the Pennsylvania primary, which they lost, very painful experience, they knew that the next phase was going to be dominated by Wright's comeback tour. Remember, he was at the press club. They didn't know how bad it would be, but they knew we would all focus on it. So he decided that was the moment to reach out to him directly. There was a meeting, a secret meeting at Wright's house in Chicago.
How did they accomplish that?
Well, there was all sorts of back and forth, intermediaries. It was very difficult. Trinity Church, the place where he had worshipped and Wright had really built up, was divided between a pro-Obama camp and a pro-Wright camp. And there were intermediaries who sort of negotiated this. He went around to the house and he said, listen, you're headed for vilification, not vindication. And he was right, and Wright was wrong.
Wright was wrong. Now, as you know, Brian Williams has had this amazing access to the White House. No one has ever photographed and captured the essence of the East Wing and the West Wing, the way Brian has in the documentary that aired, the first part last night, the second part tonight at 9 o'clock. And this is part of what Brian discussed with the president in terms of work-life balance and how the president has found the White House so far. Let's watch.
I've got two young ladies who are laughing and screaming and wrestling with the dog, and I've got a wife who's trying to make sure that I keep my head on straight. And you know, we've got soccer games, and you know, we've got you know, parent-teacher conferences, and so that keeps you grounded and provides you with some perspective.
Now, with that as setup, you report a lot about Michelle and Barack Obama. What was going on back in 2000 when he was first in this, many would say, ill-considered congressional race against Bobby Rush?
Well, they were going through a hard time. They had young children, newborns, and he was off on this futile quest to reach the House of Representatives. And Michelle Obama, really until this presidential campaign, didn't buy into his campaign. She didn't like campaigning. She thought it was a sort of frivolous waste. Not the policy part of it, not the public service. She didn't like the whole campaign politics, the game of it all. And there were tensions there, real tensions. They were in a much better position by the time of this presidential campaign. But it is interesting. This is the time this family has had together more than any other point since the children were born. And that had to come in the White House. That's a pretty extraordinary situation.
Well, in fact, that came up with Michelle Obama and Brian. I wanted to play a little bit of that part of the interview where they talked about this balance and how they've been able to actually have more time together.
Okay.
I think I've been at their school 2 or 3 times this week. But that is no different from what I did before all of this. And it's no different from what every parent that I know.
So Michelle Obama and Barack Obama, he told Brian that they managed to have dinner from 6:30 to 8. That is their time. But there was another tough time that you report about in Renegade when He lost Texas and Ohio. What happened?
That's right. Look, the first year was very tough. They didn't like being away from, he didn't like being on the road and being away from the kids. And she was campaigning for the first time and campaigning hard for him. She's a very competitive person. Texas and Ohio was their chance to seal the deal, to land the knockout punch, and they blew it. And she came out the day after that election and said, in the campaign car on the way to the airport, to her husband and David Plouffe, then campaign manager, unless they got a winning strategy, she was not going to come out and campaign again. And it was an ultimatum that maybe we're all used to in our various relationships. But she's tough.
Speak for yourself, Richard.
Okay, speaking for myself.
But that is tough.
But that was very tough. And, you know, it speaks to this idea that there was only one reason for doing this, and that was because it was serious. This wasn't an exercise in vanity. She wanted to do this to win, and she is possibly even more competitive than he is. In fact, he told me that she doesn't like playing card games because she hates losing that much.
Now, let's talk about someone who's also competitive, but when you see them together sometimes, these days at least, there are awkward moments. Joe Biden.
Right.
Talk about Joe Biden. In your book, you say, quote, Obama's challenge was not Bush's. He was in no danger of watching a powerful vice president hijack his administration. Biden's experience never fazed him. If anything, he was more distracted by his vice president's indiscipline. He can't keep his mouth shut, said one senior Obama aide.
Right.
I won't ask you who that aide was, but it does reflect restlessness that you see sometimes in Obama's body language. Most recently, when Sotomayor was being announced in the East Room, there was some awkwardness there, but most memorably, Justice Roberts.
Right. Well, look, here's a guy who they think his heart is in the right place, but his mouth isn't. So, you know, they have there's such a contrast on the discipline side of it. For President Obama, a man who has really created himself as a disciplined force in a way that he wasn't in his youth. And Joe Biden, a man, as one friend of his just told me recently, who didn't have a boss for 20 or 30 years. And it ends up that his first boss after all this time is someone he frankly disdained when he first entered the Senate. He only came to respect him when Obama beat him through the primaries. And so, you know, having to adjust to this boss, a disciplined person, has been a difficult transition, I think, for Biden, and maybe that transition is still underway.
And you could physically see when Joe Biden told a joke at Justice Roberts' expense at that second swearing in.
You could see
the president
stepping
in and touching him on the back. You also, of course, write about Hillary Clinton and the fact that Barack Obama knew that he wanted his arch rival, Hillary Clinton, to be his Secretary of State before the primaries were even over.
Before the primaries
I picked up on it a little bit later and knew that it was an early decision, but I never realized until I saw it in Renegade.
Yeah, no, he told me.
It was that early.
He told me in the Oval Office, you know, first print interview in the Oval Office, he said that it was before the primaries were over. And remember, this is a point of time when everyone around him still felt the rancor and the bitterness of the primary season.
I'm sure including Michelle.
Including everyone. And by the way, when they discussed it in the transition, again, something I point out in the book, Clinton's supporters were saying, she's over it. He said, believe me, she's not over it yet.
Not over it yet. Well, we'll see whether she's over it now. Great reporting. Richard Wolff, this is a treat. Renegade, for anyone who loved this campaign, and all of us junkies did. The Making of a President, based on an exclusive interviews with Barack Obama. Congratulations, my friend.
Thank you.
And you can watch part 2 of Brian's exclusive Inside the White House tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern.